Good day, my name is Ignatius Lim, and with me are my group mates Li Qian, Chou Shika, Lim Jing, and Lim Dao Kuan. In this video, my teammates and I will be discussing the key influences of capitalism as an ideology on the law of land in Malaysia. So, what is capitalism? Capitalism is an economic system where individuals or companies own businesses and resources aiming to make a profit. Prices are set by supply and demand, and people trade goods and services based on mutual benefit. As Adam Smith famously said, we don't rely on the kindness of the butcher or baker, but on their desire to earn a living. In this way, self-interest can lead to economic growth. Now, let us talk about John Locke. According to John Locke, one of his key ideas about capitalism is that property begins with the individual. Basically, when a person puts in the effort to create or improve something, it becomes their own. Since individuals own their own bodies, they also own the labor they perform. So if someone farms a piece of land or hunts an animal, that product of labor becomes their property. This forms the foundation of property rights. At the same time, Locke argued that the government should not have absolute control. He believed that the main role of government is to protect people's rights, especially life, liberty, and property. The government should support individuals but not interfere with their hard work. This idea of protecting rights without overstepping power is what defines limited government, and it played a major role in shaping modern capitalism. Moving on to Karl Marx. Karl Marx defined capitalism as a system where businesses and property are owned by individuals or corporations, while most people have to sell their labor to survive. He saw the system as one designed more for making profit rather than meeting human needs. According to Marx, this system leads to several problems. Firstly, it exploits workers by paying them less than the value they create. Secondly, it causes people to feel disconnected from their work and from each other. And lastly, it allows a small group of people to control most of the wealth and power. He also believed that capitalism is unstable and creates recurring economic crises that hurt the majority while benefiting the wealthy. That's all from me. I should now pass the floor to Winnie.
Good day, I'm Winnie, and I will share the key influences of British colonization and capitalism on the law of Malaysia. Before the British arrived, Malaysia's economy was shaped by the trade ports and sultanates. But everything changed in 1874 with the Pangkor Treaty, which allowed the British to advise for the Malay rulers on everything except the religion and customs. In reality, it handed the control of Malaya to British, which heavily influenced Malaysia's capitalist ideology. Firstly, the colonial administration imposed a legal structure based on English common law and a formal criminal justice system. This transcended the judiciary replaced diverse Malay customary laws, standardizing contract enforcement, property rights, and dispute resolution to favor the European capitalist market. Secondly, the traditional customary rules for land allocation were replaced by a European-style leasehold system. Under this scheme, forest and agricultural land were leased rather than the traditional allied title. It enables long-term, low-cost leases, encouraging the British planter to raise forests and develop the country. This reflects to the capitalism drive to treat lands as an asset to general profit, transforming the Malaya customary law on land to the torrent system in land law today. Thirdly, the administration established regulations governing the company incorporation, taxation, and mining licenses to facilitate the large-scale plantations and mines. The company charters mirror UK company law, embedding concepts such as the limited liability and shareholder dividends to facilitate the British capitalism. This shaped the post-independence Malaysia company legislation. Lastly, the British created the racial labour division, where Malays were kept in the villages as protected farmers, Chinese migrants worked in the tin mines, and Indian migrants laboured on the rubber estates. This created a society where races lived separately and rarely mixed, which left a deep scar on Malaysia today. When Malaysia gained independence in 1957, it inherited this racial capitalism, setting the stage for future reforms like the NEP. In summary, under John Austin's positivist model, these laws were sovereign commands imposed to maintain order and facilitate commerce, transforming Malaya into a global capitalist machine. These legacies formed the modern Malaysian law after the independence in 1957. That's all for me. Now, I shall pass the floor to the next presenter. Thank you. Good day, my name is Lim and today I'll be discussing about Malaysia's legal system in reflecting capitalism. As our country's legal system is mainly shaped by the British common law as well as Islamic Sharia law and also the statutory law that is enacted by the parliament, this legal system supports capitalism by giving Malaysia both flexibility and legal certainty to support a growing market economy. First, the capitalist nature in Malaysia can be seen in laws such as the Companies Act 2016, where it makes it easy for individuals and groups to form companies, which has thus reflects capitalist values of private ownership and also business freedom. It has also modernized the colonial era corporate system by allowing even single owner companies and strengthens the shareholder rights. For example, directors have legal duties to act in the best interest of the companies and also its shareholders. This has ensured investors confidence and encourage foreign direct investments. Furthermore, the Contracts Act 1950 enshrines the principle of freedom of contract, meaning that individuals and businesses are free to make agreements with little interference by the government. This law is important for trade and also foreign direct investment, as it creates a predictable environment where dealings are enforceable and respected. However, it also includes protections against unfair or illegal contracts, such as those involving coercion, undue influence, fraud, and also misrepresentation that is stipulated under the Contracts Act. On the other hand, the Competition Act 2010 is another law rooted in capitalist thinking, where it ensures fair competition by stopping big companies from creating monopolies or engaging in price fixing. This protects small businesses and keep prices fair for consumers, helping to maintain a healthy and efficient market. However, it should be noted that although Malaysia welcomes many aspects of capitalism, the law also sets limits to protect the society and promote equality. This can be seen in the Federal Constitution, specifically on Article 13, where it protects an individual's right to own property. However, it also allows the government to compulsorily acquire private property for public interests, such as building infrastructure or redistributing the land. This legal power has balance the private ownership with the need for state intervention for the benefit of the wider society. Furthermore, the National Land Code illustrates another way on how capitalism is moderated. Malaysia distinguishes between freehold land, which can be freely bought and sold, and also the Malay reserve land, which is owned by the Malay communities and cannot be sold to the non-Malays. This system protects traditional communal ownership and prevents land concentration in the hands of non-Malay investors. So it actually reflects how the law combines capitalist private property concepts with protection for indigenous rights and also cultural heritage. On the other hand, the new economic policy, which was launched in 1971, was a major shift in Malaysia's economic direction where it limits pure capitalist freedom. Although it is not a law itself, the NEP led to new policies and rules that requires companies to include Bumi Putra equity ownership and give more business opportunities to Malays and also increase access to education and jobs for disadvantaged communities. And this is when Malaysia courts have played an important role in interpreting how capitalism fits within the country's legal and social context, and it has also reflected a balance between John Austin's legal positivism, where laws are commands of the sovereign, and John Locke's philosophy, which emphasizes on individuals' rights and property protection. For example, courts have upheld the constitutionality of affirmative action policies under the new economic policy, seeing them as a legitimate exercise of state power to promote social justice and economic balance. These rulings actually show how Malaysian law accepts state intervention in the economy as a necessary corrective to historical injustice, even if it temporarily limits some individual freedoms. So, and also at the same time, the court continues to protect property rights and enforce contracts to maintain confidence in the capitalist system. This jurisprudential balance allows Malaysia to maintain a capitalist economy that is flexible and socially responsible, rather than rigidly free market or purely state control. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lim and I'll be talking about Islamic law and Sharia compliance capitalism. Despite the effect of capitalism, Sharia law still mainly affect the Islamic banking sector in Malaysia, which is governed under the Islamic Financial Services Act 2013. After 30 years of revolutions, our banking sector has embraced Sharia compliance capitalism by introducing Sharia compliant financial products like takaful insurance and Sharia compliant securities. Capitalism had a tremendous influence in Malaysia. All Islamic bank sectors in Malaysia were governed under the Islamic Financial and Services Act 2013, which strictly follows the Sharia law that practices muharabah, where the banks or investors invest into the borrower and share the risks and profits together. The banks play a role as of partnership with the owner. If the business is a success, the borrower will have to repay a sum that is previously agreed back to the bank. However, if it fails, then both the parties will bear the loss together. The takaful funds and Sharia compliant securities that being implemented in Malaysia is also being governed under the Act and supervised by the Bank Negara as a legal mechanism for wealth distribution, which every year has a growing rate of about 62% and has provided stronger economy and higher income for the people. The Islamic and Financial Service Act itself is a law that encourages capitalism by allowing profit-driven financial products like takaful funds that resembles the main objective to capitalism, which is to generate profit through free market competition through uncertainty, high-risk investments. The Islamic and Financial Service Act 2013 partly restricts capitalism through enforcing Sharia principles, which is known as riba, which is an interest that leads to profit, and gaha, an uncertain promise that had high possibility it cannot be fulfilled. Both were prohibited by the Quran as unjust and exploitative gain. Despite the influence of capitalism in Malaysia, the zakat funds are still being implemented in Malaysia as under a different law in accordance with different states, which is an income tax for the purpose of religious charity. It is an instrument that opposes capitalism by ensuring that profit earned will not only be left into the hands of the rich, but rather it must be shared accordingly. Zakat tax is collected by government sectors like the State Islamic Religious Council and Tabung Baitulmal Sarawak. The zakat fund itself prevents unchecked capitalism accumulation, which is core concern of the Sharia law. The current laws in Malaysia that govern the Islamic financial service sector are a combination of capitalism and Sharia laws. It ensures the main objective of Sharia laws to being followed, which is fairness and social unity, while upholding the idea of capitalism, which is to ensure profits. This allows the financial institutions in Malaysia to grow by following the nature law of Thomas Aquinas to act in accordance with rational nature by doing what is morally right and in a fair and just way. Thank you.
Good day, my name is Chong Shikar, and I'll be talking about the contradictions of capitalism in Malaysia. So despite how capitalism may be painted in a bad light, it's undeniable that humans in general are conditioned to believe the fact that if we work hard, we'll get rich. And this conditioning just further contributes to the nature of capitalism that we have in Malaysia. However, it is inaccurate to say that Malaysia is a capitalist country despite how our legal frameworks may be influenced by capitalism. Because in a recent ASEAN interview with the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, he actually acknowledges that our system is somewhat capitalistic, but also acknowledges that there's cronyism inside that's affecting the system. And he also emphasized on how the cronyism should be put to an end to uphold our democratic and basic fundamental rights. And this statement is actually in line with our current situation, where despite our legislation imposed, cronyism is seen where government-linked companies are controlling more than 77% of the banking industry. And the effect of such is that the loans are given based on connections and not to truly deserving companies that needs funding. So an example can be seen in the 1MDB case where the fundings are clearly abused and used for corruption and for personal gains. So Dr. Lafayette, who is a political journalist, actually said that Malaysia is mostly described as a quasi-democratic system with a semblance of authoritarianism. So she quotes that this is due to the economic rent capture by politicians, which is actually limiting the innovation and growth opportunities of entrepreneurs that we have here in Malaysia. So an example of such can be seen in the 1MDB case, where the political connected company wins a monopoly contract to build infrastructures, and obviously they won the contract due to connections, and then they earn the inflated profits not from efficiency but due to the connection, so they quote higher than they can, and then that's where all the money and the corrupted fundings come through. So this is also known as rent seeking and rent capture through political favoritism, where they just give the contract to whoever they favored. So this roots to Malaysia's check and balance mechanism and low transparency that we have in government. Due to our poor check and balance mechanisms, we're unable to put a leash on the executives on any abuse of power situation. So this is actually clearly seen in the past situation of the 1988 judicial crisis, where even the judiciary is unable to check on the executives without consequences. So after all, Karl Marx did predict that capitalism would lead to a concentration of power in a specific group of people, which can be seen now in Malaysia, where great power is held by the political elites or the politicians. Hence, in conclusion, Malaysia is no doubt entwined with capitalism as seen in our legislations and constitution. Thus, we're definitely influenced by it. But it is inaccurate to say that we are a purely capitalistic society due to the existence of democracy in our constitution, as well as some of the check and balances mechanisms that we have in our system. So, albeit it's not perfect, it does check up on the cronies of our countries. So, as Malaysians, I'll end with a quote by Dr. Lafayette. So the saying is that for Malaysia to grow in line with globalization, we will truly need to allow our people to write our own history. Thank you.